Recording in progress.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to start our webinar. You are all welcome. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our guest speaker, who is going to speak to us about brand positioning, especially today when the consumer is blurred and wears many faces. This is a subject in which we should all be deeply interested because it is in successfully positioning our brands that we shall survive. Our guest speaker, as the founder of Beloved Brands, is the voices of today's brand leaders. Over the past 10 years, he has advised many leaders and trained some of the world's best marketing teams on strategic thinking, brand positioning, marketing plans, decision-making, and making analytics that have defined and mapped their brands for the best future. Throughout his marketing career, he has led some of the world's most beloved brands at Coke, General Mills, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, National Geographic, Honda, the Mayo Clinic, and the NFL Players Association, raising him to the VP Marketing. He has been recognized for his contribution in marketing by winning the Marketing Magazine's Marketeers of the Year Award, four Effie Advertising Awards, in addition to being ranked the top 10 COMs by the Silicon Review last year, that is 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome Graham Robertson.
Well, thank you very much, Annette. I appreciate it. And thank you for everyone who's joining today. We will go through what is normally one of my training presentations for you today. So we're going to talk about brand positioning and how to really define your brand. And let me just get going. One of the things I like to start off with is what I view as an important thing of how we have to define ourselves. When you try to be anything to anyone, you end up being nothing to everyone. So you really got to start to think about what you want to be, who you want to talk to, as well as what you don't want to be and who you don't want to talk to. So that's really what we have to think about. The obvious marketing 101 is to suggest that we match up with what consumers want and what our brand does best. And that is what we view as the ideal space. However, in a crowded market what tends to happen is your competitor comes in there, and now they create a bunch of different zones. That red zone is for you the losing zone because they are better at it than you are. The dumb zone is the blue zone, where the consumer does not care. So you should not keep talking about something that the consumer does not care about. The gray zone I call the risky zone, but that's where you and your competition are about the same. And that's really what you have to work on, is to separate yourself to really own the green zone and the gray zone, and try to make sure that you can win that space by defining yourself. There's a few ways to win that risky zone. One is through innovation, through emotional marketing to separate more than just the actual product. And then the other way is really being good at executing with passion in that space. Okay? So let's keep going with our chat. One of the other things too is if you do not define yourself, then your competition will, and you won't like what they have to say about you, right? So you need to really define yourself before they get the chance to, because they'll probably try to say it in a bad way. So the tool I use is this benefits ladder. So we keep moving up as we go through this, from the consumer target up to our features, to the functional and to the emotional space. This is a little more detail of that ladder. And so in the consumer space, and I'll show you some of the techniques I use to define our target, really look at some need states, some enemies and insights of the consumer that we can battle on their behalf. The product features might be, some product strengths we deliver, some claims, some differences we see. The functional benefits are what the consumer gets. And then the emotional benefits are how that makes them feel. So I'm going to talk a lot about these two areas in particular, because I believe those combination of those is where we'll win. But before we do anything, I always believe that everything should start with our target and really trying to understand the consumer, because we're going to play to them and really matching what we do with what they need. So one of the things about your target is you need to start defining who is in your target, but also who is not. And that's not always an easy exercise to play to, because what happens is it's always scary to say, who isn't in our target? Who are we willing to let go? And there's a difference in a selling target. We will sell to anyone, but in a marketing target, our limited resources that we have, we want to make sure that if we spend money or time or effort against a certain target, that they will respond and bounce back and be successful with us. So we want to look at almost, what is their level of responsiveness to what we offer. A couple of tools I play around with. I'm going to show you these accelerated need states, an enemy, and an insight, just to define our consumer a little bit better. So what I look at is these moments in your consumer's life when there might be a physical or an emotional need that gets elevated at a certain point in time. So I use the example below for the quit smoking. You're most likely to quit smoking at these moments when the need gets accelerated, which might be when you have a first child. For a few reasons, you don't want to smoke around your child, or the money you're spending on your child, you don't want to spend money on smoking. Could be a major health scare that you go through. A New Year's Eve event where you're thinking about wanting to get better for the new year. Or it could be a big milestone birthday. If you turn 40 or turn 50, you might consider that. So try to think of the different accelerated needs within your own business because we can really tap into those, find them on a given calendar, or understand what they're going through. You know, another small accelerated need was Sunday nights. Now, I know we have different calendars around the world, but the night before you're about to start your work week is a much more better time to talk to a smoker about quitting smoking than on a Friday night when they're about to go to the pub and have fun. So you're not really going to quit smoking on the way to the pub. Hey, what a great time. No, it'll be at a quieter moment to think about. So with your own business, start to think about when those accelerated needs happen, how you might engage in that conversation. Another thing I want to talk about is this concept of an enemy. And while products solve small problems, brands, I believe they beat down the enemy that torments the consumer every day. So this is it's an interesting concept because it gets you more into a creative space to think about your problems that you're solving as a brand. That vacation brand. Well, the problem is vacations are all the same. The enemy is I'm in a rut, I'm bored, my life lacks meaning. The smoking, when I try to quit smoking, I get cranky. When I try it, the enemy is I'm scared the monster will come out in me, that worst version of my personality. With these diet cookies, failing at diet is the problem, but the real enemy is once I give in to temptation, I completely fall off my diet again and have to start all over again. So you can start to see that these are elevated versions of the problem to make it even more personal and emotional. And it gets you a little closer as a marketer into a creative space where you can begin to change your language based on these enemies. You can see on the right-hand side that the enemies are much more interesting than the problems themselves. They really articulate it in a better way. The next concept, so this is the third of three concepts about the consumer, are these consumer insights. And these I view as little secrets hidden beneath the surface that explain their behavior, their motivations, pain points, and the emotions that they might have. And a consumer might not always be able to articulate it, but we have to get better at trying to articulate what the consumer is going through. So the tool I use, a very simple tool, is I feel as you observe the consumer, try this tool out. I feel blank whenever I blank. And the first blank in there is trying to understand some kind of underlying behavior, motivation, pain point, their values or beliefs, trying to understand what's beneath the surface of that consumer. And then on the right-hand side, it might be some kind of moment in their life, similar to the moment of accelerated needs, but it could be any kind of moment of strength or weakness, part of their day. And we start to put those insights together. I feel this is for a local beverage that's part of San Francisco. I feel proud of everything that I've accomplished whenever I think about how much San Francisco has meant to me. For the cookie, I feel guilty and disappointed whenever I cheat with a cookie. I just wish they were less bad for you. So you're trying to articulate in a statement. What we use here is the quotations gets you to use the voice of that consumer. And the word I begins to put you in their shoes so you can try to feel how they feel and try to represent them. And when we start to put these together, we use this customer profile just to give it a lot of flavor. And it can really help your creative people or brand people as well as sales people to understand what's going on with your overall target. So we've got a target definition. We've got those moment of accelerated needs. We've got the enemy insights and a few other elements that we start to begin to put that profile together. Now that we've defined that consumer, we can begin shifting to our brand benefits with both the functional and emotional spaces that we might play into. And one of the things I come up with this idea about fat words. And fat words are words that mean so many things, they begin to mean nothing at all. And a lot of times as marketers, we kind of wreck a lot of words out there because we make them mean things. But these are the boring words that don't mean anything. They're not very able to define. Nice, great, interesting, quality. These are words we've abused so much, they don't mean anything. So what I've created is a thing I call the cheat sheet. And there's two different cheat sheets. And what we see here, and this can work for both consumer, B2B type brands, or even healthcare brands, there are different zones that you will play into. So these are 12, what we have up here is 16 different functional zones. So each of those groupings, I represent those to be a zone. And the first thing I try to do is I think about which of the three zones do I most want to play in, whether it's staying connected, sensory, experience, makes you smarter, makes you money, drives business results, probably a B2B one there, enhancing the professional standing of the customer. So these are all the benefits that they can go through. And once we narrow down to those three zones we think we want to own, I start to play around with words around them to grab maybe 3 words for each of the zones. And now I create what I call a cluster, and I'll show you how that works in a minute. But start to look at these and think of the zones you wish to own as a brand. Then we look at the same thing on the emotional side. And here there's 9 different zones with knowledge and optimism, comfort, feeling free. And again, the same kind of thing. Look for the 2 or 3 zones you wish to own as a brand, and then words around it. And what we begin to create is if we grab those 3 functional zones or 3 emotional zones, we create what I call a cluster. So this is the cluster down at the bottom for stay in control. I grab the words around it with respect, safe, and trust. And there, once I create a cluster, I can begin brainstorming phrases, benefit phrases that might make the most sense for that brand. So when I go through with the Gray's cookies, this is a fictional brand, a case study. I use a lot of them on my website and in my training. So this is a Gray's cookie that is, great tasting, but healthy. So it's that combination of the two. And what we start to play around here is these are the functional zones that I will start to own. So we'll look at the sensory, experience, and healthier versions. And what you can start to see there is I'm also narrowing down to the words, which are still in the bold, that I will begin to use as I take my cluster. When I get into the emotional space, I will do the same thing. So here I'm going to own the zones of knowledge, optimism, and control. And again, taking words around it to create a cluster. What we then see is the cluster is down here on the left-hand side. And you can start to see that each of those zones, I've created these little clusters. And now I'm narrowing down to what I view as probably the 15 to 20 different benefits that my brand can offer. And what we then do is brainstorm sentences with I get, going back to that, I get a low calorie, low fat treat. I get a cookie made with. I get, and we go through and we might brainstorm 15 to 20 different phrases in that functional area. We then do the same in the emotional space with I feel in control of my weight and health. So if I get to the point where I get all these phrases, you can either test it with consumers or try to use your own kind of knowledge of what you may be playing to. And what we try to then do is take those phrases that we might have and start to measure them. I come back to those 3 crazy circles I showed you before, but I want a simpler test of that. So I take a look at 2 different things that I might consider in this 4-box kind of grid. How highly motivated will the consumer be by this phrase, high versus low? And how ownable I can have this phrase for me instead of my competition. And as I mentioned, you could do this in a focus group, or you can even find a market research company locally that can do some of this kind of measurement. When I start to plot those ideas on, what I want to look to is the ideas that find in that winning zone. So in this case, guilt-free and feel in control seem to be the 2 ideas that are up to that highly ownable and highly motivating for consumers, meaning that will move them through their journey. It will attract them, maybe get them to try, and maybe get them to consider being in our brand franchise. Those in the red, I start to view that my competition can do better than me. So this is a healthy cookie that tastes great, but this is not a bad for you cookie that tastes great. So I'm never going to be as good at taste as some of those other ones. In the dumb zone, the consumer doesn't care about these things like comfort and choices. They don't care about those as much, so they fall into that dumb zone space. Okay? So what we want to narrow down to is, I view, if we can narrow down to what is your best functional and your best emotional, and I call that the 1-2 punch. Well, if I'm with a new consumer, maybe I'll lead with my functional and then move them up to the emotional side of things. But if it's a current consumer, maybe what I'll do is I'll lead with the emotion first, because I know that they've already connected with us, and I might give a gentle reminder of the functional benefits that they already love. So having this 1-2 punch allows me to start to manage that brand. So those different zones, we can see that functional benefit, if I combine the 2 with the functional benefit of the lower craving solution to avoid cravings, and then the emotional benefit about staying in control, now I can begin to optimize this benefit by combining the 2. And that will be the guilt-free cookie to help you stay in control of your health. Okay, so hopefully you can play around with this and see how that works for you. And then now, as we look to that main benefit, we want to cast possible doubts about what the consumers may have, and then find ways to close off those doubts. And that's where we use the reasons to believe, the support points. So as we have our benefit statement, I now want to back that up with what I view as the 2 best support points. And what we can then do is look, and this is a tool that we use to brainstorm, what are the different process things we might do in our brand that we can, detail how our product works different, something in the production process or what we do, added services or whatnot. Is there something in the product that makes us different? What about a third person to speak out, whether it's experts or past users? And then it could be behavioral in-market, whether it's a test that you might do or some kind of in-market usage you might see, or any of those. And what I begin to do is I start to brainstorm. And similar to the other way, I can measure this with customers if I want in a focus group and see what they respond to, or I can do it in a quantitative test as well. And what I'm looking to do is to take the 2 best benefit statements. When we created those key words of the different clusters, I can also use that to create a thesaurus, so that these are the 15 to 20 words that I'm going to do all my communication on. So I can take those different statements we have in that blind taste test And I can begin to use the word choices from my thesaurus. So I will add in different words to that phrasing to make it better fit with my brand. So I'll add in the words informed, knowledge, experience, and healthier. And down here, I might add the words control, smarter, motivation. That thesaurus also allows your team to write better. So you can give that thesaurus to your social media people, your sales people. I've worked with teams where they give it to the salespeople who are writing emails to the customers and use that to communicate. So this is a good tool to make sure people stay within the space of your brand. And then I can put all of that together by taking that overall target we worked on earlier, and then the main benefit and 2 support points to come up with an overall positioning statement. What I next want to do is make sure I can even go tighter on that. And I do believe that all of these word choices matter, especially if you have other people who are communicating on your brand's behalf, because now they can begin following our word choices. What I then want to do is look to get this short code of what our brand stands for. What's your shout from the mountain? And I call that a brand idea. People will call it different things, whether it's a brand DNA or a brand essence. To me, it's all similar. It's the short code of your brand. This is Nike. That is a tagline, but not a brand idea. So that's a slogan or a tagline. The brand idea of the definition of Nike is we push your athletic boundaries to inspire you to go beyond what you thought was possible. So I can get a tagline from that brand idea. I can also design shoes. I can do customer support. I can build a store around the idea, not around the tagline. So what we're looking for is to define your brand. Everyone who works on your brand needs what I call a short code to describe your brand in 7 seconds. So we've got some of the more famous brands around the world. Apple, we make technology so simple that everyone can be part of the future. Intel, the computer chips, when you find us inside your computer, you can trust us to make your computer work faster. And Starbucks and Rolex, some of the great brands out there. Having this short code allows you to start to control the business beyond everyone, to make sure everyone who's touching the brand understands how they can communicate. And I'll show you how I view that it begins to control everybody. But before there, I'll give you my own short version of how we define that brand. And what we do is we do our own brainstorming around these 5 areas before I start to define that brand. So words that we would use to describe the products and services, the consumer reputation, the influencer, the brand role, and the cultural inspiration. So everything that surrounds that brand, we begin to define. And we do brainstorms on that. We narrow the word choices and then put phrases. And from there, what we're looking to is a common phrase that can really help unify all parts of the brand. So in this case, the best tasting yet guilt-free pleasure, so you can stay in control of your weight. So it probably should be about a 10 to 12 word phrase, and it could be even shorter, but not really longer. If you're getting into the 20 words, it's not really a short code anymore. So you're looking for that description that you can have. And I can then write a brand concept with this. And so that becomes my headline, the main idea, that guilt-free pleasure. I bring back those consumer insights I might have developed. Do you feel guilty? Wouldn't it be great if you could sneak a cookie without going off your diet? I then bring in that main brand. The promise statement becomes your benefits. And then my reasons to believe go in there, and a call to action and a visual. So I can create this concept that can be useful in many different ways. I can use that as a who are we page, could be on my LinkedIn, could be various places within that brand. Now I can take that brand and begin controlling my entire company, that brand idea. It should control the brand promise, which is what's going to connect and separate our brand in the marketplace. That will influence our packaging, logo, and slogans. It will communicate the brand story and how we tell that in the marketplace with advertising and media. It should influence our new innovation, leading the product development team to really deliver. And then the product purchase moment can be your selling and your retail teams. And then the overall happy experience can be customer service or the operations team who deliver the brand. And this is the example of what it looks like with Gray's cookies. And what we may do in this case is bring in some of those subject matter experts from across the company and start to define, okay, if that's the brand idea, how will you deliver it? So bring in your product development team. How will you deliver that brand idea? Your sales team, your operations team. And we begin to control the entire company through that brand idea. The brand idea can also control your advertising message because it can match up and inspire a creative message with a creative idea. So the creative idea might be that just do it. And then we can start to manage the overall different media choices as well, whether that's paid, earned, owned, or shared media, and start to map out there. I can begin controlling the external, which is what we view as traditional marketing, as well as the internal, which is managing your own culture with the values and innovation and service behaviors. And so that way I can use that brand idea to inspire each of these groups within a given company. Whether that's your story becomes the marketing team, but then the sales team, whether top to top, or the sales delivery, and then our experience team with the delivery of that brand, or the problem solvers, the R&D, and even the backroom customer service people who will also deliver the brand. Internally, just the opposite of a concept test, we can take some of those same ideas we've been working on and create an inspiring message for the individuals who are going to work on the business with our brand promise, our brand idea, our main differences, and how the people can deliver those differences. And this becomes an internal document to hopefully inspire everyone who works on the brand to deliver on our behalf. And that brand idea, I believe, starts to control all of these elements. It inspires your positioning and fits into that, comes from that, etc. It also should deliver your brand, your strategic plan. It should be the way we get business results, and it delivers the culture, the consumer experience we deliver, the purchase moment, the innovation, the story, etc. And how we start to see that expand is each of these areas, that brand idea should be the controlling device to what is about 80 different activities that happen within your company. And so that is, to me, marketing as that hub and spoke idea. The hub is that brand idea and the brand management of that, coming up with that and ensuring that. And then everyone who works in the company should be able to start to deliver their version of that. Okay? So it doesn't mean we manage all of those people, but they should be inspired by each of these areas to deliver that. So even the accountant that's sitting in the corner, if we are all about speed to market, then that accountant might find a cheaper and faster way to do something, then that is going to help us overall. And hopefully they are inspired to find things that are fast. And what we have is on our website, we have a presentation that can, which we offer for sale. that is a way to build your own brand book with a lot of the tools you saw here today with the target, the profile, the concept, etc. And then we also have a book, and I know a few of you have this book, but this is a book that takes you, brand positioning is one element for us. We have planning in there and strategic thinking, analytics, and even advertising. So that is the presentation. I thought I would open it up to some questions. I know that, Annette, you said you have some questions, and hopefully I can answer those, as well as some others might have some as well. So thank you. That's the presentation. I know we did a lot there, but feel free to begin asking some questions, and we can go from there. So Annette, over to you.
Thank you, Graham, for the presentation. I'll still welcome members who joined us late. We've covered a lot, and starting from differentiating the emotional marketing and functional benefits. Many of us will have to catch up on that at a later date. Probably I would wish to start with our questions to save us time, and I would request members with any more questions, please use the chat to type more questions. I've seen Doreen. Thank you, Doreen, for your question. I'll start with the questions that we received on our applications. The first question comes from Apollo Rwama, and it says, is positioning still a key driver for branding for brands currently?
Yeah, I believe it is. I know that there's a debate out there with distinctiveness and differentiation. I think both are essential. I think the way we find our distinctiveness, the starting point to that is the differentiation and figuring out our positioning. Because that way we're able to judge what kind of execution makes the most sense for us. As we build our distinctiveness with brand assets, this begins to be one measuring tool. Is this motivating and is this ownable for us as a brand? So I think they go hand in hand.
Okay, thank you. I hope Apollo is online to have received that question. The second question, it comes from Deogracius Kamoga and says, how to understand the value of chain of my industry? I think, how do I understand the chain value of my industry?
Yeah, I would start with your customer base and trying to understand them first, whether you're dealing with consumers or customers. So are they businesses or individuals? And trying to start to define who they are. And that allows you to then make the judgment calls as to what are the functional and emotional benefits. So that's where I would go for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Graham. The next question comes from Iman Fred. He says, I'm curious to attend and understand how to position my brand for success, especially if it is in the service, not a product.
Yeah, and there, some of what I showed you there at the end for service brands, the positioning tools at the start are just the same. What you want, though, is that it's even harder to control, and that's where you need to build a way to experience the culture of the company. Everyone who's delivering that service has to understand the brand. And we see some of the best service-led brands, such as Starbucks and Ritz-Carlton Hotel, are service-led brands. And what they use is their brand to try to communicate to their staff on a daily basis or on a weekly basis to communicate. And I believe that service brands, you should be marketing to your own people as much as you're marketing to the consumer.
Interesting. Iman, I can see you are online. I hope you are happy with that answer. The next question is, how have the most brands recovered from the past 2 years of the pandemic? And that comes from Diana Luzi.
Yeah, and we're still seeing that shake out. But the service brands, the in-person brands, restaurants and hotels and tourism have struggled the most. And they're going to have to figure out how to deliver those. I did an article during the pandemic that those businesses that have the most face-to-face have really struggled, and they're going to have to find innovative ways to create safety within that face-to-face. And so some of the examples I saw are restaurants that are creating pods, like glassed-in areas and whatnot, are going to have to figure that out. And those businesses that have that face-to-face or touch are going to be the ones that struggled the most. The businesses that are doing e-commerce and delivery have grown exponentially during the pandemic.
Okay, thank you, Graham. The next question comes from Boniface Biamkama. I hope he's joined us. The question is, what things do you consider when changing a marketing strategy?
Yeah, I do my analysis first. So I would, we didn't talk about it here a lot, but in the marketing strategy, I look at doing a deep dive analysis before I change my strategy. So I would look at what's happening in the marketplace, any changes with the consumer, and what about the channels, the competition, or the brand itself. And once I do that, I begin to take those 5 areas I just talked about and narrow them down to what I call a brand challenge. And from there, I begin to do my thinking to lay out a new strategy. But I've got to do that analytics and thinking before I can do anything.
Okay, thank you. The next question comes from Mase Atrojere. And what are the key things that one would consider to make a brand successful? I think in short.
Yeah, so here we talked about positioning, and I think that is one element. Also, so defining yourself as a brand, I think these brand ideas, these short codes allow you to manage the brand a lot better. I think about making focused choices because we all have limited resources. What strategies are you going to pick that are going to bounce back to you and drive your most success? That is crucial. And then I would also say that passion separates us. One of the differences between our jobs and a lot of jobs out there, especially in the business world, I believe that our passion for marketing and branding is one of the big things that separates us because that is our energy source. And consumers and customers respond to our creativity. Marketing, no matter what science tells you, marketing is still half art and half science. So you got to have that creativity aspect of things. So don't let people tell you that it's just a science. It's still half art. Commercial art really makes a big difference for us.
Okay. Mas, I hope you've received that answer. I see you're online. You're welcome. The next question comes from Adonia Waibare. And this question is, how can I measure success?
Well, I like to measure the success in a few different ways. Can we measure our strategies? So as we lay out the different strategic choices we make, we need to have a market impact, which is I want to move my consumer along their journey. We need to have a tightening of our bond with our customers or a reputation we can also measure. So those are 3 things about the brand I can measure. I can also measure my activities that I choose, whether that's the creative and how that's responding or the media choices and how that we can measure those. And so those I would measure my strategy and measure my activities.
Okay, interesting. Unfortunately, Adonia has not joined us yet. The next question comes from Kayombwe Jocelyn. How do you position brands in a way that is versatile so that even with uncertain times, I think it's referring to the pandemic, do not affect the brand at all?
Yeah, I would say that if you can define your brand using the tools we've shown you today, that will be for the long haul of things. What you can also layer onto that is during the pandemic, I think you need to figure out adding in the layer of safety if you're especially if you're a service or experience-led brand. You need to find, it could be a short-term 2 to 3 year element of your safety, but you have to probably add that in during the pandemic. So restaurants need to know how it's going to be safe. Consumers are going to want to know how it's safe. Hotels, how is it safe? Cruise lines, safe. Personal services, lawyers or doctors or health people, how is it safe? And you need to find a way to define yourself. And that may add on to your current positioning. And hopefully, as we get to post-pandemic, the safety element could ease up a bit.
Okay, thank you, Graham. The next question is kind of customized. It comes from Shayla Mwebaze. How do I build a brand for my new jewelry retail shop?
Well, for a new brand, what's crucial is that you're going to be doing any new brand, and I know there's one in the chat as well for new companies. And new companies, it's even harder because you're starting an entrepreneurial business. And what there is, you have to do a bit of test and learn through the early stages of things. And even for me, I have been in my business for 10 years. So I've let go of things that did not work for me, might work for other people, but I have to almost test and learn as I go through things, especially for the first year or two, to try out different things. But if they're not working, let them go. And as you hit that 2-year mark, you can really begin to crystallize your brand definition a little more. So I would recommend test and learn for the new businesses as well. Same as the one in the chat as well.
Okay. Thank you, Graham. Second last question before we move to the ones in the chat it comes from Doreen. How can startups, that is business in a startup phase, build their brands? I think it's close to Shayla's question.
Similar. Yep. I would use some of these tools. I would start to, but I would let it be flexible. A lot of these tools are defining brands that have been in for a while. I would use these, but allow some flexibility as you're in that test and learn stage. That is what my recommendation would be. Even as I said, for me, I started to do certain things that I didn't like doing or I wasn't very good at. And I let those go. And the same thing for you as a new brand. Try to figure out if it is something you are good at. And if not, let it go and focus on things you are good at.
Okay, thank you, Graham. I now move to the questions in the chat. There is Nicholas. Yep. Nicholas is asking, how do you structure innovations and brand teams to ensure both pursue different but mutually enforcing goals without having redundant overlaps?
Yeah. And it depends on different companies. And I'm going to be very honest. Some companies, the product-led people just do stuff, and then we marketers have to take their stuff and figure out how to communicate it. That's one reality. Not my perfect reality. So if you can control it, I do think the brand idea and an innovation plan and an innovation process can really help to lead that product development a little bit better. And so I believe that our impact is to present what the customer is all about and what their needs are, and make sure that your product development people are giving new products that match up to the customer needs and match up to the brand. I know a lot of companies out there, the product people just develop stuff randomly. And then it's up to the marketing people to figure out how to communicate it. And it doesn't work all the time that way. Having that combined effort and making sure that they're building stuff to match up to the customer is much better.
Okay, thank you, Graham. Raymond Magumba is asking, are brand attributes similar to company values?
Every marketing calls things differently all the time. I call the company values is our beliefs. I would say that brand attributes, I would call them brand assets. And brand assets are things that we can use as in terms of marketing, whether it's the logos or colors or taglines or phrases or past ways we've marketed, could be, or demonstrations. All of this becomes assets that we can use going forward. And I do believe that brands should almost collect assets as we go of things that work and keep trying to build them into the future. I mean, Starbucks has a thing called the red cups at Christmas time. That's an asset. It's not really a value. It's not a belief. It's just an asset that they can use. The pumpkin spice latte, also an asset of Starbucks. And so those become things that they can use each year to connect with consumers and build some loyalty and build some success and repeat phrases. The values are beliefs within the company, and these set off the expected behaviors of how people should act. So integrity could be a brand value. Family-run business could be a brand value. Commitment to the environment could be a brand value. Those are not really assets. Those are beliefs, behaviors, etc.
Okay, thank you, Graham. There's a question from Nicholas here. He's asking about the approach to ensure end-to-end consistency in a brand voice, tone, and expression across the different touch points, that is the sales, media, digital, and so on.
Yeah. And so you saw the work we did to find out the overall, the emotions that we want to own. And those, to me, those emotions are hints to us at what the brand tone should be. And that's where I get my own tone, because if I do that emotional work on these are the emotional zones I want to do, whether it's, optimism or control or some of those emotions we showed on the cheat sheet, that's where I get my tone. Okay.
Lama is, thank you, Graham. Lama is asking, what do you think about brands recently abusing the claim of killing 99% of bacteria across all categories?
Yeah, it's a dangerous...
Focusing on that claim during the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, and I know that I believe in ethical marketing. That's one of my core beliefs, that we can do damage if we're unethical, because people will believe us in the way we do things. And I did see a kitchen cleaner here in Canada, and it might be the same there, which was saying that they kill 99.9% of the germs, including COVID germs. And I understand that if there were a germ on a kitchen counter, they could probably kill it. What they can't do is kill airborne germs, and they can't kill germs that get within you. And so that, I think, is the miscommunication that I see. It's Lama, you're asking that question. And that's the danger, is that we saw in the United States when their president said to drink bleach, like people drank bleach and went to the hospital with bleach issues, right? You shouldn't drink that kitchen stuff. So that's the danger of badly communicating things. And we as marketers have to make sure that we are ethical. So I think that it is abusive, and I think it adds to the potential misinformation of things. Most of the people on this call are in the communication business, and we can see around the world a lot of misinformation spins in some of the same fashion that we as marketers do. They use some of our same techniques to spin misinformation and bad information, and I think it's dangerous. And that's one of the things that bugs me too.
Okay, I think this is the last question. It comes from Robert Bogere, and he's querying, what are the crucial drivers one should consider or look out for when building an icon brand?
Yeah, I think, part of it is that it takes time. That's one of the things that you need to do. So we showed you the tools to define that business, but success breeds more success. And that is to get an iconic brand. It will take time. Nike, one of the most iconic brands, has been around for 50, 60 years and wasn't very big until about, for the first 10 years. So Starbucks, world famous brand, not famous for about the first 15 years. I probably heard about it around the 20th year they were in business. They started in 1970, and I don't think they even had a coffee store until about the 10th year. And then they had so it takes time. It's not something you can do overnight. But to build that brand, I think you need a good brand idea. You need a loyal base of consumers. People would call them consumer advocates, consumer, fans. You need them to be engaged in your brand and doing as much work to spread the news. If we look at the Apple brand, there are Apple fans out there who speak out on its behalf and brag about being an Apple consumer and whatnot. And I think managing those people to build that brand is really important for an iconic brand. So those that are in the fashion space, the tourism space, the entertainment space, the apparel space, etc., can really use those influencers and fans to spread the brand wider, more emotional, and faster than other brands. But it takes time.
Thank you, Graham. I don't know if you have any concluding words to this webinar, but I would like to thank all the members that have joined us this evening. Graham has talked about the presentation on sale on their website. Please go there and have a look at it. Probably I would also urge everyone, those who have not read Beloved Brands, and from what I know is there's now a textbook. Please look up for all these tools to push our marketing to the next level and excellency. Probably after we've heard from Graham, I would invite Frank, the chairperson, to say a few words. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for hosting me. I appreciate it. And thanks to Frank for inviting me. And I am excited to see all the passion. I can sense that in the questions and the attendance. It's great. And so I'm excited to see what you guys will do with all this information. And I look forward to hopefully one day visiting in person too. And that would be great. We can figure out what that looks like in the future. So I appreciate all of the energy, and keep your passion for marketing alive. It's a very fun discipline and profession. And I've gotten lots out of it in my 30 years of doing this, and I love what I do. And that's important. So thank you.
Amazing.
Okay. Thank you very much, Annette. I think you've been an amazing moderator. I also want to thank
Thank you.
Graham. Can you hear
Thank
me?
you. Yes, I can.
Yeah, okay, cool. So I also
Yes,
want to
we
thank
can.
Graham. Reaching out to you. I thought it would be a bit hard maybe to convince you to come and have a talk with us, but you made it so easy, and the talk has been very insightful. Let me do a bit of marketing for you. So other than the book, I think you also have a mini MBA,
Yes.
which is very affordable, and I think for the marketers who are in this webinar, feel free to search. I think Beloved Brands. If you go to that website, you will see the details about the mini MBA. Because whatever we had is just like a quarter of the entire training. To everybody who I know coffee is about to reach, but you decided, you know what, we'll be stuck here and make sure that we get this knowledge. Thank you very much. For this year, this is going to be our last webinar. Our next webinar is going to be on the 26th of January. So with those few remarks, I want to wish everybody happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year. And probably one person I want to speak before we leave is Jackie, because Jackie, I know you are a champion of Graham this side. Maybe also a vote of thanks from your side, and then we can wrap it. Are you there, Jackie?
Yes, I am. And like I'd said earlier, really, I would like to extend our thanks to you, Graham, for allowing to speak to us this evening. And I guess I can speak for the partner organization to UAA, which is the Uganda Marketers Society. We're really pleased that you could share with us from your vast knowledge and experience. I am already a diehard fan, so I didn't need a lot of convincing to come through this evening, but we look forward to many more interactions with you and to hosting you physically in Uganda when it becomes possible to do that safely. So thank you once again.
Well, thank you very much, Jackie. And to anyone on here as well, and how Frank and Jackie probably are connected with me is on LinkedIn. So feel free to connect or follow. I try to post something every day or so, and they're all focused on knowledge and different tools. So my goal is to hopefully take all my career and to make you a better marketer in yours, and that you can be successful in your career. So that would be what would be most exciting, is if you became successful.
All right. Thank you, people, and wish you all a good evening.
All right. Thank you,
Thank
Frank.
you, Graham. Thank you, Frank.
All right.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Recording